Here is your story. Marcus Webb had learned a long time ago that people made up their minds about a man before he ever opened his mouth. It was the boots, usually. Or the truck. Or the way his hands looked, permanently marked with grease lines that soap could clean but never fully erase, the kind of hands that told a story before the man attached to them said a single word. He pulled into the parking lot of Hargrove Motorsport and Luxury just after 9 in the morning. His 7-year-old daughter Lily buckled into the passenger seat beside him, her drawing pad already open on her lap. She was working on something with a blue crayon, pressing firmly the way she always did, like every picture was urgent. The building ahead of them looked more like a hotel than a garage. Glass front. Polished stone. A row of exotic cars visible through the showroom window, sitting under soft lighting like paintings in a gallery. A place that charged more for an oil change than most people paid in rent. Marcus had no business being there, by most people's measure. But Raymond Ashford had called him personally. Raymond Ashford was not the kind of man who made personal calls. He had people for that, assistants, coordinators, a small army of professionals whose entire job was to sit between him and the inconvenience of the world. He had built his first company at 28, sold it at 34 for a number that had 9 figures in it, and spent the years since doing whatever he wanted. What he wanted, mostly, was cars. Not as transportation. As art. As proof that human beings, at their most obsessive and precise, could build something that approached the impossible. His Bugatti Chiron Super Sport was the crown of the collection. Deep ocean blue. Hand-built. Worth more than the building Marcus worked out of. 2 weeks ago, it had started dying. Not dramatically. No smoke, no warning lights, no sudden violence. It would run perfectly for 40 minutes, engine singing, every system reporting clean, and then it would simply stop. No fault codes that made sense. No pattern a computer could catch. Just silence, as though the car had made a private decision to be finished for the day. 5 specialists had come to look at it. 5 had left without answers. The first was a factory-certified Bugatti technician flown in from Pennsylvania. He spent 2 days with the car, ran every diagnostic the manufacturer provided, and concluded the issue was a ghost, his word, not Raymond's. The second was an independent electrical engineer who had worked with Formula One teams and charged accordingly. He found nothing. The third and fourth came together, a pair of consultants from a firm in Germany that specialized in high-performance European vehicles. They were polite, thorough, and equally unsuccessful. The fifth was a professor from an automotive engineering program who had published papers on fault detection in hybrid powertrains. He lasted 1 day before quietly admitting the problem was beyond the scope of anything he had seen before. Raymond had called Marcus on a Tuesday evening, through a chain of recommendations that started at a racetrack in Virginia and ended with a retired engineer who had one thing to say: if you want someone who can hear what a machine is actually telling you, call Webb. Marcus had listened to Raymond explain the problem. He had asked 3 questions. Then he had said he would come on Thursday, and that he was bringing his daughter because she had no school. Raymond had said that was perfectly fine. The receptionist inside did not share Raymond's enthusiasm. She looked up when Marcus and Lily walked through the glass doors, and her expression did the thing that expressions do when a person arrives somewhere they were not expected to fit. She recovered quickly. She was professional, but not quickly enough. "Can I help you?" she said. Marcus Webb. "I have an appointment with Mr. Ashford." Another look. A check of the screen. A small, controlled moment of recalibration. "Of course. Let him know you're here." They sat in chairs near the window. Lily kept drawing. She had moved on from whatever she was working on in the truck and was now sketching the cars in the showroom with the focused calm of a child who had decided the world could wait. Marcus watched her and felt the familiar quiet feeling, part pride, part something heavier, that came whenever he really looked at her. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's way of concentrating. Everything else she had built herself. Raymond Ashford came through the rear door a few minutes later, and he was not what Marcus had expected, which was itself something Marcus noted. He was not tall. He was not loud. He had the unhurried quality of a man who had stopped needing to prove things to rooms a long time ago. He offered his hand and shook firmly. "Mr. Webb. Thank you for making the trip." "Not a problem." Raymond looked down at Lily. She looked up at him with the direct, unimpressed gaze that 7-year-olds reserved for adults they had not yet decided about. "Is that the blue Bugatti?" she asked, pointing toward the service bay doors. "It is," Raymond said. "My dad says Bugattis are the closest thing to a fighter jet that a person can legally drive." Raymond smiled. "Your dad is right." She returned to her drawing, satisfied. The head technician came out shortly after. His name was Derek Coles, and he had been with Hargrove for 11 years. His certifications covered an entire wall in his office. He shook Marcus's hand with the careful politeness of a man who respected the occasion but had already made a judgment about the outcome. "I want to be honest with you," Derek said. "We have had some very experienced people look at this car. If there were something straightforward to find, it would have been found." "I appreciate that," Marcus said. "I just want to be clear about what you're walking into." "Understood." Raymond led them into the service bay. The Bugatti sat in the center of the space under bright, even lighting, and even knowing what he was there to do, Marcus paused for a moment when he saw it. Not out of reverence exactly, more the way a person pauses when they encounter something that exists at the outer edge of what effort and intention can produce. It was a genuinely extraordinary machine. He asked for all the documentation. The full service history, the diagnostic exports from every previous session, the installation records for any aftermarket additions. Derek handed everything over. Marcus sat down on a rolling stool and read. He read the way other people did not read, not scanning for the one thing that stood out, but moving through every page at the same pace, giving each entry the same attention. Lily settled onto the clean floor a few feet away, crossed her legs, and continued drawing. Nobody disturbed her. Raymond found a chair and waited. Derek stood with his arms folded and watched Marcus with the expression of a man who was trying to keep his expectations somewhere reasonable. It took Marcus 50 minutes to finish reading. Then he stood up, pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves, and walked to the car. He did not connect a single diagnostic tool. He did not open a laptop. He simply looked, moving slowly around the car, crouching at certain points, tracing the routes of wire harnesses with his eyes, checking where cables passed through the firewall, noting how the supplemental systems had been integrated. The Bugatti had a factory telemetry system. It also had an aftermarket unit that had been installed 14 months earlier by a reputable shop, clean work, well documented, no shortcuts visible on the surface. But Marcus followed the ground return path of that aftermarket unit carefully, and near the rear bulkhead, he found a chassis bolt that the installer had used as the grounding point. The bolt itself was fine. The bracket it sat in was aluminum. And that aluminum bracket, over 14 months of heat cycles, the expansion and contraction of metal warming up and cooling down, had developed a thin layer of corrosion at the contact surface. Invisible to the eye unless you were looking for it specifically. Not enough resistance to matter when the car was cold. But after 40 minutes of running, as the engine bay temperature climbed and the metal expanded slightly, the resistance at that junction increased just enough to create a small, irregular voltage variation. The engine management system detected the variation. It could not identify its source, it was coming from outside the factory wiring. So it did what it was programmed to do when it encountered an unresolvable sensor anomaly. It cut fuel authorization and shut the car down. It was not a Bugatti problem. The Bugatti was working perfectly. It was a ground connection problem that was speaking to the Bugatti in a language the Bugatti could not ignore. Marcus walked over to Derek. "Do you have a contact resistance meter?" he asked. "And dielectric grease?" Derek looked at him. "What did you find?" Marcus explained it. Straightforwardly, without drama, the way he explained everything. The silence that followed had weight to it. Derek was a careful man, an experienced man, and Marcus could see him working through it, pulling up everything he knew, testing the logic, looking for the place where it fell apart. It did not fall apart. That would explain the temperature dependency, Derek said quietly. Almost to himself. Yes. None of the previous diagnostics would have caught it because they were all looking inside the factory system. Right. The factory system wasn't the problem. It was responding correctly to something that shouldn't have been there. Derek was quiet for another moment. Then he went to get the equipment. They removed the bracket, cleaned the contact surface down to bare metal, applied proper grounding technique, used the resistance meter to confirm the junction was clean, and reinstated everything correctly. The process took less than an hour. Raymond started the car. It ran. They let it run for 90 minutes. Then 2 hours. Then Raymond took it out on the road for 45 minutes and brought it back. It did not cut out once. Raymond Ashford stood in the service bay and looked at the car for a long moment after he came back. Then he turned to Marcus. "Name your rate," he said. Marcus named a number. It was a fair number, not modest, because he had learned some years ago that modesty in pricing was not a virtue but a habit left over from being told he should be grateful for the work, but fair. Raymond shook his head. "That's not enough." He named a different number, roughly double. "That covers the consult, the result, and frankly the patience. I'll have the office send it over today." He shook Marcus's hand a second time, and this handshake was different from the first. The first had been courteous. This one recognized something. Lily had packed up her drawing pad and was standing by the door, ready to leave the way children are when they have been patient long enough. But as Raymond walked them toward the lobby, she pulled a page from her pad and held it out to him. He took it and looked at it. She had drawn the Bugatti. The proportions were surprisingly careful for a 7-year-old, the long low shape of it recognizable, the color filled in with her blue crayon. And standing beside it was a small figure, simply drawn, with dark hair and work boots. Raymond held the drawing with both hands. "Can I keep this?" She shrugged in the way children shrug when something matters to them but they do not want to make too much of it. "I made it for you." At the lobby door, Derek Cole stopped Marcus. "I owe you an apology," Derek said. "Not for anything I said out loud. But for what I thought when you came in." Marcus looked at him steadily. "You didn't know me." "No. But I made a decision before I did." Marcus considered that. "Then you know what to do differently next time." He did not say it as a lesson. Just as a fact. Derek nodded once, and that was enough. Outside, the morning had warmed up while they were inside. The parking lot was bright and quiet. Marcus's truck sat at the far end, looking exactly like what it was, a working vehicle owned by a workingman, and he did not feel any particular way about that. It was his. It worked. It had carried them here and it would carry them home. Lily climbed up into the passenger seat and buckled herself in with the capable independence she had been building since she was 5. She opened her drawing pad to a fresh page and picked up a new crayon. Marcus started the engine and pulled out of the lot. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Lily said, without looking up, "Those men in there didn't think you were going to fix it." "I know," Marcus said. "But you did." "I did." She pressed the crayon to the page. "Because you read everything first. And then you looked at the part nobody else thought to look at." Marcus glanced at her. She was already drawing. He turned his eyes back to the road and let the city open up around them as they drove, and he thought about how strange and simple it was, the way the truth of a thing almost never lived where the noise was loudest, and the way the world kept being surprised by hands it had already decided not to trust, and the way a 7-year-old girl in a passenger seat could summarize in one sentence what 5 specialists had spent 2 weeks failing to find. The drive home took 40 minutes. She drew the whole way.